let's bring in Jim Walsh, international security expert with the MIT Security Studies program. Jim, thanks for being with us.
Good to be with you, Rick.
So if there is another military strike against Syria, what would it look like?
Well, my guess is it would be more than happened last time, insofar as the president did launch those missile attacks, yet despite that, we have had a subsequent chemical attack. I'm guessing he's going to want to raise the ante. And certainly any use of chemical weapons, and I do think it was the Syrians who carried this out. They've done all sorts of criminal acts, war crimes during this war, and I'm sure it was them. Certainly the U.S. is within its purview to try to send a message that the use of weapons of mass destruction won't be tolerated. The problem, Rick, is that there are some constraints here. If you attack the actual stockpiles of nerve agents and the weapons themselves, that can create a toxic cloud that could float and kill lots of civilians. If you go after Assad's military assets, which I think is the more likely scenario, it has to be said, those 2,000 U.S. troops that are in Syria, they become a target. So
Right.
there are different costs and benefits to be weighed here.
So how significant a strike would it have to be to make any kind of a difference?
Well, it's a great question. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, Assad, if he feels like he's up against the wall, is going to do what he wants to do. So you can send a deterrent signal. It's going to be a weak deterrent signal no matter what you do, speaking as a national security guy. But I think in some ways, a strike, what it really does, it gets the attention of the Russians and the Iranians. Neither Russia nor Iran want to be held responsible for chem attacks, in particular the Iranians who suffered chem attacks during the Iran-Iraq War, and whose population is very sensitive about that topic. So I would hope, the hope would be, by striking back in a way that was somewhat more robust than the previous strike, what you do is you focus the mind of the Russians who walk into Assad and say, "Are you kidding? Cut this out." I think that's the best possible scenario.
Jim, you mentioned the 2,000 U.S. troops who are in Syria tonight. The president has said he wants to pull them out at some point in the next few months, but he wants them to finish what they started, which was to destroy ISIS. We know ISIS is on the ropes at this point. What are the pros and cons of actually pulling those troops out of Syria at this point?
Yeah. I think the president has the right instincts here. He doesn't want to get tied down in wars in the Middle East that never reach their objective and go on forever. And I am sympathetic to that. I mean, it's 2,000 U.S. troops. This isn't Iraq, it's Syria. Syria is in control. I think whether we're there or not, Syria and Russia and Iran are going to try to kill ISIS. So if they want to kill ISIS and finish the job, I'm okay with that. And I don't know what we get by staying there. And if anything, I think this latest episode shows that it actually limits the freedom of action for the president, because now he has to worry in response to this chemical attack whether the Syrians will then attack those 2,000 U.S. troops. If those troops weren't there, he would have a broader freedom to take more robust action. So, you know, at the end of the day, if you're going to justify military intervention, you have to say, what's your objective? What's it going to cost? You know, the answers are some basic questions, and frankly, I have not heard the answers to those basic
Jim,
questions.
you know that President Trump criticized President Obama for pulling the troops out of Iraq because it created a vacuum, which many say helped give ISIS that rise to power. And there are critics who say that in this case, if we pull the troops out of Syria, that Al-Qaeda would be the one to gain strength. What are your thoughts?
Well, again, Iraq invited us in and was our ally. Syria did not invite us in. They are our enemy, and they hate ISIS as much as we do. We shouldn't be fighting other people's battles when they're going to be willing to fight them themselves. You know, if we're worried about vacuums or, you know, instability, we can spend every last dollar in the U.S. Treasury and every soldier in the American military and never accomplish sort of covering all the vacuums. I mean, most of the Middle East is a vacuum. There are large parts of Africa that are a vacuum. I think we have to have priorities, and we have to have a sense of strategy. And anytime you use military force, you have to say, what is the objective and can I accomplish it? That should be the driving question. I don't hear answers to those questions.
Jim, I wanted to get your thoughts on another topic real quick. North Korea, which we heard today from the administration, is willing to talk about denuclearizing. Should we take that seriously?
Well, I think what we want to do is test that proposition. I mean, I thought it was a little weird, Rick, frankly, that there was this big announcement from the South Koreans, and then we didn't hear nothing from the North Koreans. So finally, we're starting to have the conversations you would expect if the North Koreans were serious about a negotiation. But we're not going to know if they're serious until we sit down at the negotiating table. I don't think we can prejudge this, but I think it's a good thing to put them to the test.
Jim Walsh, we appreciate your time tonight. Don't go anywhere because we're going to bring you back.